Buying a home is costly, it can be emotional, and quite frankly, you could be setting yourself up for failure. There's quite a few things that no one actually talks about when buying a home, and in today's video, I want to shed some light on these things because I believe by talking about them, it will not only help you become a better home buyer, but also have a better experience going through the process. Now, if you're not looking to buy a house right now, that's okay. Maybe you're 6 months, a year from now. These principles don't change, but there is one right now based on the current environment that I want to talk about that I don't hear anyone else talking about. So there's this idea that you can buy a home now with higher rates and at some point refinance in the future. And I truly do believe that interest rates are going to come down in the future. But there's something that you have to pay attention to and be very, very careful with. If you're somebody like myself that is a commission-based employee where your income changes, it's variable, it's never consistent, or if you're in an industry that could see slower growth as the economy slows, then you want to make sure you pay attention to this. As someone who's actually going through the home buying process at the moment, this is something that I'm actually considering. So the idea of taking a higher interest rate now with the idea that I'm going to be able to lower that rate maybe next year, maybe the following year as interest rates come down. It's a really, really good idea. In theory. But what if that doesn't actually play out? Well, what am I talking about? Well, let's say the economy continues to slow in the real estate business. The number of transactions don't pick up. They kind of stay like they did in 2023 with a huge dip in the number of transactions actually taking place. So when that happens, typically means I make less money. So my tax return for the end of 2023, for the 2023 year, is likely to be less than it was in 2022 or even 2021 because those were gangbuster years in the real estate market. So just because I was able to buy a home this year doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to qualify to be able to refinance that home in the future. So if you're someone in a position like me, this is something you need to consider because there might be an opportunity where your income shows differently than it has in years past and you no longer qualify. Are you still in a position? Are you still comfortable with that monthly payment that you're taking on right now? That's what you need to really consider. Yes, people are telling you the right thing, that interest rates are going to go lower at some point in the future, and there's likely going to be an opportunity to refinance. But with that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to qualify to actually refinance. On top of that, what if property values slowed a little bit and you only put a little bit of money down and you don't necessarily have the equity to be able to refinance? These are the things that you have to think about when buying a house. On top of that, you have emotions, you have hidden costs, and we're going to dive into that right after you hit that thumbs up if you find any value in my videos at all. Also, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on everything real estate related. People buy emotionally and justify logically, and it doesn't happen any more than when people buy homes. Buying a home is an emotional process where people make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make because it affects their family, it affects how people view them, it affects their lifestyle, it affects so many different things. So when you're thinking about buying a house, you're going through the process, try to think a little bit more logically. Now, this can be very, very difficult, but you do this by writing down things. What's important to you? The pros and cons of making this move. It not only takes the emotion out of it, but also takes the stress out of some of the decision making in the process, especially when you have a partner involved. When you have two people that may be thinking two different things, it's often good to write things down and compare notes to see where you're on the same page and where you're not on the same page. On top of that, you have to be able to manage your emotions in the process of writing an offer and waiting on the response from the seller, dealing with negotiations, dealing with competitive markets and other people making offers out there. Because there's things that you can control in how you write the offer, but there's things that you can't control in how the seller responds to you. That's something that you have to be able to deal with. And not only can it put stress on the home buying process, but it can put stress on relationships. So just make sure when you're going through that process, these are things you're thinking about. In addition to the emotional side, you have some cost involved. Most people, when they think of buying a house, they're thinking of the down payment. Maybe they're thinking of the closing cost, and both of those can get paid by the seller, by agents, by lenders in other ways, which we're not going to talk about in today's video, but you need to be thinking beyond that. Are there any additional fees that might need to be paid? The appraisal is often paid out of pocket. Home inspections, sewer inspections, mold inspections, all these different inspections are often paid out of pocket outside of the process. And these are things that you need to factor in when you're thinking of buying a home, on top of Maintenance costs. What's going to cost to maintain that property? Are your utility bills going to go up? Are you going to need mortgage insurance? Are there HOAs involved? All of these things need to be factored in to your budget when deciding whether or not you want to buy a home. Now, when you're going through the pre-approval process, the lender is factoring some of these things into your monthly payment when approving you, but they're things that you need to also consider because some of these costs are going to be higher when owning a home than they are when you're renting a home. So just make sure you're taking that into account in your budget when you're going through that process. And that's going to lead me to talk about the home inspection here for just a minute. Now, in 20 years of selling real estate, I typically come across two different types of buyers. They're the buyers that are handy people that aren't really worried about, small repairs, small cosmetic thing changes over time. And then there are those that worry about everything. The fact that a light bulb isn't working and just minor things in the process. And on top of that, there are some people that fall in between that. And what I want to mention here is that when you do a home inspection, things are going to come up in the home inspection. Don't be expecting to get a home inspection, even if it's a perfectly turnkey property that you absolutely love, that comes back clean with nothing on it. You're paying someone to find problems in the property. Therefore, they're likely to find those problems. So instead of running or getting cold feet when these problems are presented, rather think more logically about the process. Remember, take that emotion away and think of whether or not they are truly problems in the property or just things that you want fixed. Because maybe you're not handy or maybe you just don't understand what they are. Either way, these things are negotiable. Rarely do I see deals fall apart because of a home inspection, but they can when people don't fully understand how the process works. Remember, everything is negotiable. If there are issues, chances are you can still get the seller to repair them, give you a credit, and/or in some cases, maybe your agent will help out, or maybe they're not really that big of an issue at all, and it's something that you can take care of after the close of escrow. But this is really where the importance of a really good real estate agent come in hand. Someone that can walk you through this process, someone can tell you that this stuff is normal, that it's not crazy, and that you're not crazy for thinking the way that you think. A lot of people out there believe that us as agents are just pushing home buyers to buy homes. Your agent should never be pushing you to buy a home. They should in turn be providing you with the information necessary and letting you make the decision. I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with a client and said, hey, listen, I completely understand if this isn't the right property, if you don't want to move forward, if you want to back out, it's reasonable for you to want to do that. So don't feel obligated to move forward. That's the conversation your agent should be having with you versus the agent pushing you to get a deal done. In fact, I'm often telling buyers, you need to have a line in the sand. What you're willing to go up to, but not cross in your negotiation process. Maybe you're willing to offer $1 million and you're not willing to go above that. That's okay. That's your line in the sand. But you need to have that. You need to have it in making your offer. You need to have that in negotiating repairs to a point where you're not upset if the deal doesn't go through, if they're not willing to agree to your terms. So it works the other way, right? You can't get upset if your max price was $1 million, where they accept a price of $1,005,000, right? Because that's above your line in the sand. So just make sure when you're going through that process, having a conversation with your agent, that they're an agent that you can trust in that process. Now, one other thing I want to mention about having a good agent will tell you that you need to see the property at other times of the day, right? I know people buy, again, emotionally, justify logically. They see it in the morning on a Saturday. They absolutely love it. They put in an offer, it gets accepted, and then they don't see it again until they come back during the home inspection. Or maybe they drive by it during the day to show their family or what have you, but they never get out of the car. They never walk around the property at night, on the weekends, different times to explore what the neighborhood looks like, to explore what the neighbors do during the day. Go knock on some doors, meet some people, find out what the pros and the cons of the neighborhood are. Why do people like living here? Why do they like living there? In addition to asking questions like, how long have the neighbors actually been here? When you have a huge turnover in a neighborhood, that could often be seen as a bad sign versus buying a house where all the neighbors around you have been there since the neighborhood was established. That shows you that people like it and don't want to leave. So when you're considering buying a home and you're going through all of these different things, again, a lot of it's emotional, but provide some logic to it by doing the things that we're talking about. That way you can confirm that it's the right home for you. Now, you've probably heard when you're buying a home that you need to get pre-approved to buy that home up front. That's absolutely something you need to do without question. It really should be your first step before really even talking to a realtor, or after you talk to a realtor, let them refer you to a mortgage professional to get pre-approved. So that should be step number one. But something that no one else talks about is the idea of getting quotes like insurance and some of these other things prior to actually going under contract in a house. And what I mean by this is over the last year or so, insurance costs have risen considerably across the country. In fact, my insurance just nearly doubled from where it was last year to where it's going to be next year. And for a lot of people out there looking to buy a home, they're not factoring in this increase into their budget. They're maybe asking a friend, a family member, how much do you pay? Getting an idea from the lender, hey, what is the normal amount for this? And they're plugging it in. And that would have been okay prior to the last year where insurance costs have gone up so much. So I would advise you, when you're going through the pre-approval process and you're getting approved for a loan, also call an insurance person. Tell them about the property you're looking to buy and have them give you a quote on that property so that you have real numbers that you can provide to your lender, for one, to make sure you still qualify to buy that home, but also that it fits into your monthly budget. If, for example, you're factoring in $100 a month for your homeowner's insurance and it ends up being $200 a month, that's a big difference. That's $1,200 a year. And for some people, that might be a reason that they don't proceed forward. But what you don't want to do is go under contract, release contingencies, and be dealing with the insurance because it's not really that important, something you're going to deal with later, and then finding out the number is way higher than you thought it was. And this is even more true if you're in a flood area or a high fire area, because insurance is so hard to get at the moment in some of these areas that have natural disasters. It's worth doing the work up front so that you don't have regrets later on. Now, if you're watching this video and you've been pre-approved, or maybe you're watching this video before you've actually gone through that process and you want to get a competitive quote from another mortgage professional out there, do me a favor, click the link in the description below. I've created a network of mortgage professionals that I know, like, and trust that can guide you through that process. It's a free analysis of where you are to tell you exactly how much you can afford, and it costs you absolutely nothing, and it tells you whether or not you're in a position to buy a house. So if you're interested in getting that second quote or seeing where you stand, do me a favor and check that link. Now, the last thing that no one really talks about that people should be talking about is the idea of a longer term commitment. A house isn't just a place to live, it's a long-term financial commitment. And if you're buying in the current environment, rates are high, prices are high, affordability is low, and because home prices have gone up so much over the last couple of years, there's a really good chance that you don't see a lot of price appreciation over the next couple of years. You more see home prices go up a little bit, go down a little bit, likely move sideways more so than anything else. And you need to be looking at your house as somewhere you're going to be for the next 5, 7, 10 years. Because if things do move sideways, if you don't have a lot of equity in your property, then that could put you in financial distress if you have to sell that home for some reason. And I know there's a lot of gurus out there on the internet saying, hey, just buy a house and in 2 years, the value is going to go up. You're going to take that money and you're going to use it to parlay it into a bigger house. And you're going to be able to do that every 2 years until you create an empire. And that's just not realistic. Yes, some people have been able to do that. Some years are better than the next, but the opposite can also be true. So just make sure when you're thinking about this, you're thinking from a longer term perspective. You're thinking about, where are you going to be in 5 years? Are you going to be married? Are you going to have kids? Is the home I'm buying able to support that sort of thing? Those are the things that you need to consider in today's market, on top of the ability to resell it. How easy is that home going to be able to sell in the future? And am I comfortable with the monthly payment? Do I have money in the bank? Those are the things that I believe are the most important when you're buying a home. But if you're watching this video going, Jeb, how can I prepare myself to buy in the upcoming market ahead with super high interest rates, house prices, housing affordability low? What should I focus on? Do me a favor and check out this video here.